welcome to another episode of the Beyond the Device podcast, where we explore the life-defining moments that shape careers within the medical device industry. We are particularly interested in understanding someone's personal experiences, challenges, pivotal events that then go on to influence their professional journey. And as we progress through the conversation, we will eventually land on the one question: what is the one defining moment or experience that changed everything for you and set you on the path that you're onto today? Today's guest is someone that worked as a civil servant for almost 20 years, focusing on healthcare policy. They then moved over to MHRA in 2011 and worked their way up to become the Director of Devices before making the swap to BSI around 3.5 years ago to become the VP of Regulatory Quality and Regulatory Services. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Graeme Tunbridge. So a big thank you for joining us today. And how are you?
My pleasure. Yeah, good. Good morning. Yeah, very good.
Welcome, Graeme. So as Nathan has just covered, people will know you for your roles at the MHRA and currently now at BSI. But what we want to do and where we start with all of our guests is your early life and influences. So tell us a bit about where your story began and at your early years, what shaped you growing up.
Yeah, so early years is an interesting place to start. You kind of cast your mind back, don't you? And my childhood was fairly stable and happy. I was born in Croydon, which is a suburb in South London. I still live in Croydon, so I've managed not to escape my childhood roots. In fact, the room I'm talking to you in now, I live in what was my grandparents' house. This was my nan's sewing room. She was a milliner. She made hats. That was her profession. So kind of if I close my eyes, there's a mannequin over there. There's a pack of silk cut down there. You know, it's going back to her kind of happy place. So in terms of that, kind of family was always a very strong part of my life. I guess in the context of this podcast, the things I thought about were, okay, how did my career start? And I kind of started working pretty early. At the age of 14, I started doing some short tennis coaching, so just supporting a coach, working with the kids doing that. At the age of 16, literally the day after I turned 16, I went to a local supermarket, applied for a job, and started working there. And so I think in terms of that aspect of my life, I've always been very independent and wanting to make sure that I could support myself and do things to support myself. So I was always very clear I wanted to earn money because I wanted to buy a car. So that was why when I was 16 I was doing my job, because I knew that when I was 17 I wanted to pass my driving test as soon as possible and then get my car and that sort of thing. So I guess that's shaped how I am and how kind of things have gone since then, I suppose.
And you've mentioned the house that you're in and the grandparents that lived in it and staying quite close to family roots. We find that a lot of people have key role models in their early life, whether that is parents, grandparents, teachers at school. Is there anyone that stands out for you from your early years as a role model that took you on this path?
On this path, no, because I don't know. I wasn't exposed to kind of people in this world, so the kind of path is something different, I suppose. I'll talk about kind of role model from a personal perspective, but career wise, I was the first one in my family to go to university, first one in the family to get a degree. So it was kind of my parents just kind of empowered me to do my own thing, and luckily I'm the kind of person that thrives in that kind of environment. It's like, okay, fine, I'm sorting myself out. Hence sorting the jobs out, hence sorting the university out. Sorting jobs out, but I don't think any teenager would say, you know what I want to do? I want to be a medical device regulator for my career. That's a fantastic thing to do.
Imagine saying you want to grow up and recruit them.
It's a good point, isn't it? So like my dad sold paper, but that was that was what he did. My mum was a solicitor, so the professional world was something a little bit different. I definitely had a couple of teachers at school who really pushed me to go beyond what I would maybe kind of have the natural self-confidence to do. So, I went to university at Oxford, and I would never have dreamed that I'd have got in there, and I didn't even think about it until there was a couple of teachers who were like, no, this is something that you need to do. So that kind of helped set things off there. I probably, I talked to my grandparents. The person I always think back to is my grandfather, who was a kind of very thoughtful, quiet individual who would he would just sit in a room and just listen and just soak up what was going on. And he was always very, very attentive to what people were saying, people's needs. And he would come in with a really kind of funny comment or just wry observation that just showed that he was completely absorbed and completely kind of bought in to what everyone was saying. He didn't feel the need to dominate the conversation, but by that kind of that single comment or that witticism or even just a twinkle in the eye, a wink or something, would totally kind of own the room. And he was kind of real inspiration for me in terms of the power of listening and operating in that way.
Nice. So when you got to Oxford, never thinking you would go to university like that, was there any feeling of imposter syndrome when you got there?
I don't think so. That's never really something that I've sort of suffered with, insofar as I've always, and this has kind of characterized my career as well, I think to some extent, is you look round and you go, okay, these are just normal people with normal problems trying to do their best in various different ways. They've got their strengths, they've got their flaws, and they're all trying to get along. And I was trying to do the same. And kind of as I got there, I was like, okay, yeah, those teachers were right. I can do this. And as I kind of went through, I was like, yeah, okay, I can not just kind of exist here. I can thrive here. And I think that's, as I've kind of progressed in jobs, I've always kind of looked around and gone, there's never been a sense of, oh, crikey, what am I doing here? There's always been a sense of, we're all kind of getting along. But actually, I think I can do this. And I think I can, some stage, I can take the next step because I look at what my boss is doing, what my boss's boss is doing. You know what? I think I can do that.
Yeah. And what we tend to find with people's careers, people's personal life, there's a kind of one moment, one experience, something happens, and it almost changes the direction or the way you thought about certain things. Is there anything in your life that stands out as a major pivotal event that has shaped you and your professional journey?
Yeah, so allow me to kind of to talk a little bit about my kind of career, and I've thought about it in the career context. So as you mentioned in your intro, I joined the civil service on the kind of graduate scheme, and I was working central government Department of Health in the UK for 7 years, and then I moved to MHRA. So I moved in 2011. I didn't move to MHRA because I suddenly had a kind of strong yearning to learn about medical device regulation. I moved to MHRA because at the time there was the negotiations on the MDR and IVDR were starting, and as a civil servant, what you're trying to do, particularly if you want to kind of make your way into the upper echelons of the kind of senior civil service, is you need to kind of round off your career. And so I hadn't really done very much in the way of EU work. It was a big facet. And so I moved to MHRA to do EU work. It just happened to be on medical devices. It could have been anything, but it was the right job at the right time. And sure enough, but I then sort of slowly, gradually kind of fell in love. Is that the right word? I don't know, but it just kind of grabbed me. But then after 4.5 years, I was like, okay, I kind of outstayed my welcome in the civil service career sense, if you like. And so I moved back to the Department of Health, and I then sort of had this decision to make, really, which is, which way do I want my career to go? Do I want to carry on being the civil servant doing different? Because as a civil servant, you don't get that deep specialism or expertise in an area, or do I want to do something different? So I went for a job working at the Cabinet Office, which is at the very centre of government, and it was a job working for the Director of Proprietary and Ethics, which is an odd title. But it's a kind of a team that basically did the firefighting when things went wrong. Those were the people that would come in and kind of sort it out. And particularly when the ethics and propriety bit is when things went wrong, and when kind of ministers were caught doing things they shouldn't do, or government operated in a way that was questionable and things needed. So it's very much a kind of a very sort of sensitive role, and one you had to be incredibly kind of, thoughtful about how you do, but very much one that kind of would set me on that career trajectory. And I prepared for the job interview. I went along. I was always a very good civil servant. I'd kind of got all my competency examples ready, and I was ready to do it. And the director who was interviewing me was a lady called Sue Gray, who's kind of in the news for various reasons over the last couple of years or so. Just completely left field. I got completely flummoxed by the first question she asked. She just threw this scenario at me. Right, this crazy situation has happened. I'm on leave. You're on your own. What do you do? And I just kind of went, whoa. And I I really wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared, and my mind wasn't in the way of dealing with that. So I didn't do a great job at interview. It was all right, managed to pick it up, but I felt like the job was a great fit for me. Kind of, I ticked all the boxes to get there. It was a great progression, and then this interview really kind of floored me. And then I think the other thing about the interview was I kind of nipped to the loo after I was done, and I looked in the mirror, and I had, before the interview, I'd had a double espresso, which is probably my advice would be, that's probably one espresso, maybe two espressos too many. Anyway, felt like it was a good idea at the time, but I'd obviously downed it before I went in, and I'd managed to rest the cup on there, so I had a line of espresso across my nose there, and I was like, if I had any doubt whether I was getting the job, that was out the window. So I suppose, so why is that important? Why is that the defining moment? Because I then kind of took a step back and reflected and thought, okay, I loved working at MHRA for 4.5 years. I really loved the topic, and particularly I loved the people. And so I was like, right, no, this is it. This tells me something, that what I thought was originally going to be my career, kind of working away in government, isn't it. I'm going to go back to MHRA and do that. And sure enough, I managed to find a job moving back to MHRA relatively soon after. Then spent a kind of another, roughly 5 years there before the move to BSI. So I've now been doing medical devices for nearly kind of 15 years. Again, if you'd asked me as a kid, I wouldn't have said that was what I was going to do.
And it was obviously a role that you wanted before the interview, and you'd sort of said, you tick all the boxes. Obviously, to get the rejection, how were you feeling? How did it impact you?
I mean, it was, I'd kind of, how can I make this sound not too, I hadn't had many rejections before then. It had been a relatively smooth case of, I went for a job and got but by most times. So my kind of career pathway had been relatively smooth. So not getting the job in of itself was a bit of a kind of, whoa, that was a bit of a surprise. I'm pretty good at taking the knocks and moving on from them pretty quickly, and saying, okay, this is something that it didn't happen. Other avenues will open up. I think maybe that's not the right way of putting it. I can make other avenues open up. So I've always been kind of quite, when I want something to happen, I will try and open the doors to make it happen. And I think if you've got the confidence and the resilience to be able to do that, then you can make things happen. So I was like, okay, we'll take stock, have a think about what's needed. Okay, I think that's the way I want to go. So kind of managed to open some other doors to move on. So I'd say I kind of picked myself up pretty quickly, but that is one of my one of the things that I have is that kind of inherent resilience and inherent, right, that wasn't right for me. This has happened for a reason. I wouldn't have been the right person for that job. Maybe that interview told me that I wasn't the right person because I didn't deal with that particular situation very well. Fine, we'll move on.
Mm. So obviously you said that, previous to this, every job you've gone to, you've got it. It sounds like pretty much whenever you've put your mind to something, it's happened. This is the first time you've had that knockback. So where does that resilience come from? Like, could you point to it?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty fortunate in that it's something that is just kind of inherent in me, and I'm able to not take those kind of things too personally, but also I've never, whilst I kind of said I kind of saw my career going off that way, it was never like it was never my single-minded dream to get over there. I've always been very kind of flexible to see, well, where are things going to take me? Where might this end up? And perfectly able to kind of accept that actually you might veer off a completely different direction to the one you expected to. And that's fine. And actually there were a couple of jobs where I kind of did that, and I very quickly went, oh, whoa, that is not for me. And you kind of, you veer back at the end, but you don't, I would say, again, another piece of advice is don't be afraid to take a step that it might feel a little bit kind of different, because you can always turn back in. There's always the option to do that. I think it's a good lesson is to never burn bridges, and always make sure that when you leave a job, you leave it on good terms, because you never quite know where you're going to go. So you always need to kind of be be a good person in that sense. And I think then you're not closing doors behind you, but again, be prepared to kind of pivot and do things differently. So I think it was just another one of those. I was like, no, okay, fine, we'll move on, we'll find something else.
And on top of what you've just mentioned, are there any other sort of specific lessons that you'd learned from this particular experience?
Any other lessons? I suppose there was definitely a lesson, and I've definitely taken it in terms of future interviews, and not to be fooled into thinking that there is a particular way to interview, and trying to be a bit more flexible about it. Almost kind of not prepare less, but prepare a bit more broadly, insofar as okay, this could go any one different direction. It's really super important to have thought about some of the core things that you've done in your career that you want to pull on, but also be prepared to talk about a much wider variety of things and kind of deal with the scenarios that might be thrown at you, talk about your personal life, that kind of thing. So I suppose that's one of the key things. Almost kind of relax a little bit more, maybe. It's a really hard thing to do with a job interview, because particularly if you want to get the job, that's definitely one of them. I think that I'd kind of previously done that thing where I'd kind of squiggled a bit in my career, so that didn't worry me so much. So that wasn't so much of a worry.
And maybe check yourself in the mirror before you walk in.
Very, very, very good. And like I said, kind of go easy on espressos.
Yeah.
I think in my defence, I think that would have been 2015, 2016. I would have had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old or something like that. So it was on top of that as well. And I suppose that is always, you can never underestimate the challenge that stuff outside poses you as well. Like maybe that wasn't the right time, because actually with 2 young kids, maybe that would have been the worst job in the world for me, because I'd have been working 12 hours a day, massively stressed, all that sort of thing.
So you've mentioned stress there, and it's a big part of managing stress in your career, and we talk about mental health all of the time now, and you as a leader of so many must be aware of that for those in your team and your organisation. So is there anything that you do personally to manage your own stress and mental health, whether that's in work day to day or some of the practices that you have outside your personal life?
So I think it's yes is the answer, because it's so easy to kind of slip into some bad habits. The things I try and do are I try and work sensible hours. It's because I'm in my home office most of the time. It's really hard. It's really hard to kind of to keep that separation, but I do try and close the door. So I really, really encourage people, and I myself kind of switch off. I switch off on the weekends. I switch off particularly when I'm on leave. I'm gone. Forget about me. I kind of I won't look at emails. I won't kind of try and be helpful and sort of jump in on things that might be happening. And I think that's important for 2 reasons. It's important because it gives me the opportunity to rest and recharge. But it's also important because it tells my people that I completely trust them to deal with any particular situation that might come up when I'm not around. And actually, that's a sign of a strong leadership is having a team that is sort of fairly self-sustaining and self-able to do the work. And I'm kind of here to help guide and shape and put a strategic direction together and kind of take the flak when stuff hits the fan and so on. But generally speaking, by empowering people, it has that kind of that virtuous circle of, well, I can switch off. I do try and do stuff outside of work, so I spend time obviously with my kids, but I try not to let that dominate things. And I kind of sport and exercise is something that probably is my thing that helps me decompress. I just came back from 4 days playing cricket in Suffolk, which is kind of my real happy place, and I've come back with this kind of warm glow over me. And it, like I said, that was a great time just to switch off and be quite selfish. Like I left my family at home; they weren't happy about it, but I was like, no, and I've done this for years. So yeah, that's
yeah. You kind of you forget that, especially when you have kids, that you're also a human and you have needs, and it's so easy just to say, right, every bit of free time has to go into them. So yeah, doing that's probably a very good thing. It's good for them as well. Because I'm sure you show up as a better person after it. So.
Well, the day after, I'm a terrible person because it's not just cricket. It's kind of it's evening activities as well. But the days after that, I'd like to think I kind of come out of it and yeah, definitely improve.
Yeah.
Do you bat or bowl?
Oh, I wouldn't say I do it either particularly well. I guess I bat a little bit more than I bowl. Yeah.
Nice. So from the outside looking in, the organisations you've worked in over the past few years, particularly if we think about COVID, that would have been high pressure, stressful time, long hours, very visible in the public eye. How did you manage just day to day during those times? Did you thrive? Was it overwhelming?
It was definitely kind of when I was thinking about the turning points, which are kind of the context for this conversation. COVID was the other one that comes to mind in terms of kind of shaping me and to some extent my career. It really was a mad time, working in government and working in a bit of government that was so directly impacted by what was going on. Essentially, kind of our job was across the kind of the key device areas that were impacted during the pandemic. So you're thinking oxygen, ventilators, that area, diagnostics, that area, kind of PPE, and those were the kind of three main areas. It was just about how can we support the government, the NHS in the UK, to be able to get safe and effective products in a context where there was just complete pandemonium globally about getting these things out. So I was lucky in that I had an incredibly strong and capable team around me, and we formed bonds. Me and my scene team, my kind of fire scene team that will endure for the rest of my life. I'd expect a couple of them I work with now at BSI. We kind of reformed the gang, if you like, because those are very formative experiences. It was a year and a half, 2 years of incredibly intense work. I wouldn't want to do it for much longer than that. But as it was, it was it was incredibly rewarding because I thought what we were able to do as the MHRA in the UK was really strike this kind of very fine balance between saying no to people, because there was always a sense that if you said no, then you weren't part of the team, you were being obstructive. But there was this real kind of sense of something is better than nothing in terms of the products. Or if we can get something to someone, it's better than nothing. A crappy ventilator is better than no ventilation. We had to explain that's not true. A PPE that doesn't work is better. No. So we had to really kind of strike that balance. That was a real challenge, but I think we managed to tread that kind of that fine line. And like I said, it was largely about just this group of people that kind of came together and just managed to forge this kind of this team that was just very, very solid. We all knew what we were here to do. We were speaking on the weekends and the evenings. It was mad, but like I said, probably the most rewarding thing I've done in terms of what we managed to achieve.
Nice. And I feel like I've got those type of people that I could go to with a personal problem, with a professional problem. You've just got people in your life that you can lean on, and sometimes they change, but then you have your consistent ones. So have you ever had anything like a formal mentor, or has it just been managers you've reported into, people you've just been close to in work, or friends? Like who do you lean on when you need to?
Yeah, I've had some good managers in the past. There aren't that many managers wise, so I stay in contact with now. Probably the main one I still kind of catch up with is a guy called John Wilkinson, who was director of devices at MHRA before me, and he's been around for a while. But he was probably the reason why, one of the reasons why I rejoined. Going back to my story before, the reason why I rejoined the MHRA was because I got to work for John, and he was incredibly just my favourite person I'd worked for, because he would just trust you, listen to you, and just have you back. And that was it's a pretty simple kind of combination. So that kind of person, he's a great person to kind of chat to and bounce ideas off. Apart from that, I've never really got on with coaching. I'm not sure why. It's probably something to do with, again, kind of reflecting on what we were talking about earlier, the sort of the inherent resilience that I have and the ability that I have to kind of work things. I like to think I can work things through myself pretty well. I've never found that. Maybe I just need to find that person. If when I find that person, then it'll work for me. But it just has. I've never found it to be that valuable. Probably the person is my kind of my wife. We kind of chat about stuff when we're not chatting about kind of the kids and whatever. It's normally chewing through nutty problems at work. She'll have a go at hers. She's a GP, so she has very different problems that I have, but it's kind of interesting to have someone from a totally different perspective to throw problems my way and I throw problems her way, and we kind of chew things over. So that's probably the person that I use the most.
I suppose on that, I think I can relate to that, because it's almost trying to figure it out is the fun bit. That's part of it, and you get the enjoyment of, I didn't know anything on that subject. You learn it, whatever it may be, and that's where the satisfaction probably comes from. I don't know if you can relate to that. So
yeah, no, I totally agree. It's interesting, the kind of the learning new things bit. Since moving to BSI, so my background is medical devices. And since moving to BSI, I was kind of immediately moved and so right, AI regulation is part of your remit as well. Okay, right, interesting. And kind of in the last 6 months, so I've had an additional kind of area thrown at me as well, which is kind of just product certification, but outside of medical devices, so certifying for all the other stuff that BSI does, be that PPE or lifts or whatever it is. And you forget how energizing it is to learn a new area and, like you said, kind of crack it and work it through and identify the problems and then start solving the problems. It is really energizing. And again, finding new people to work with as well I really love that.
So based on, I suppose, the couple of turning points that you've mentioned, how have both of those two now shaped your career in medical devices sort of to date, and sort of what you're looking to do? So
I guess I took the decision to go down the medical device path. So I was like, right, this is going to be where I'm going to commit to, and I'm going to sort of, I guess to some extent, close some doors behind me, and that was fine. So that's kind of set me off. But now, interestingly, as I said, my job now has kind of opened up a little bit more. But that kind of happens in leadership roles. You kind of, it's part and parcel of it, and there are relatively few jobs where you'll be able to say, I just want to draw a very clear box around the things I'm good at and enjoy doing, and I'm going to carry on doing that until I get bored, then I'll do something else. You have to accept that it's kind of very much a kind of blurry boundaries, and things come and go, and that sort of thing. So that kind of set me down the path. I think COVID was probably enlightening for lots of reasons. COVID definitely kind of precipitated my moving on from government. It wasn't the easiest place to work. We had it was the dying days of the Conservative government. There was also kind of the culture that I had got used to and really enjoyed working in the civil service became a bit more loose and kind of problematic, if you like. There was a sense that because we kind of had to break the rules during the pandemic, bend the rules. We just had to find ways of making things work, and you can do that for a defined period of time. But that's not sustainable going into the future. The rules are there for a reason. You'd expect me to say that I'm a regulator, that they are definitely there for a reason. But there was this sense of, well, you did it during the pandemic, so why can't you do it now? Because, well, that involved working evenings and weekends. That involved breaking rules left, right, and centre. So that kind of definitely made me think, right, okay, this is time to move on. So that's kind of, that sent me down there. But also the other thing about COVID, and it was a piece of advice that I really, when you listen to people talking and certain things just absolutely kind of chime with you, and there's a bit of leadership advice, and he kind of someone, it was a guy called Duncan Selby, he was Chief Secretary of Public Health England in the UK a while back, and he said it's very easy to be good around during the good times as a leader, very, very easy. When you earn your bread is during the tough times. That's when leadership qualities really shine through. And I've been around leaders that during the tough times are horrible to be around. And so that kind of resolved me to, I'd like to think I'm reasonable, but it kind of resolved me to think that's such an important thing for me that I've identified. And so that's something that I will always try and do whenever anything there's a problem, a crisis, whatever it is. I'd like to think that I can I'm a good person to be around. I want people to think that when they bring problems to me, I'm going to help them solve their problems, not make their problems more difficult to solve.
Yeah. And what do you think the industry can learn from your story?
I guess it's not a normal career trajectory to get to a senior role in kind of regulatory affairs, if you like. Most people probably kind of will kind of do quite a stepwise career. You build your technical files, you kind of host some audits, you do this, that, and the other, and kind of really kind of build it up that way. There are different ways of getting through, and so I went through a completely random way that just happened to get me this job. Ironically, I'm sort of fairly unqualified to do any of the jobs that people like that report to me, because they're doing a lot of the kind of the nuts and bolts of the work that I haven't done in the past. But I think I'm able to bring sufficient knowledge and background and understanding, and I've got also a fairly kind of unique perspective. It's really handy for BSI to have someone that knows what it's like to operate on the other side. I've got a really kind of solid network of people globally that I still kind of keep in touch with, kind of former colleagues and regulators that kind of helps in that sense as well. So maybe that's a lesson is that you know there's not a single way to kind of to do your career. I would always say, and I'll go back to it repeatedly because it's a piece of advice I always give people is like also don't be afraid of stepping out of kind of don't see your career as a ladder. Kind of you gain an awful lot from doing things that are slightly different or completely different, even if it's only for 6 months or a year. You decide to go back again. Actually, you bring an awful lot from that experience, whatever it may be, that will then help round you as an individual and give you that kind of broader set of skills that, if you are interested in kind of progressing your career, I think will allow you to do that in a way that is kind of gives you a bit more credibility to have that wider experience.
Yeah. And I suppose looking forward then, where do you see yourself? And we'll split this into kind of two parts. We'll first start personally. Yeah, what's the plan for you?
Personally, outside of work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mentioned exercises. I think for me, I've started kind of properly running in the last maybe 8 months or so. So I've got a half marathon in a month, end of September. So I will run that in under 90 minutes. So that's an aim. So it takes quite a lot to I've been fascinated by the kind of journey that I've gone on. I just literally found out yesterday that I'm running in the London Marathon next year, which is
Nice.
I'm slightly terrified about. It was one of those things where my sister works for a charity in Shrewsbury, a homeless charity, and so kind of at Christmas she was like, look, we've got places next year, but we're struggling to find anyone that wants to do it. Do you want to do it? I was like, yeah, go on then. And literally just kind of yesterday the email came through saying, yeah, it's happening, and I kind of forgot about it. So that's going to take up quite a lot of time, but I enjoy a lot of that, and like I said, it gives me the time to do things for me. So right now, that's my main focus. My kids are kind of they're 12 and 10, so they kind of look after themselves, and so luckily it's not too much there. So that's really boring, isn't it? I'm going to run a bit, run a lot, in fact.
You will love the London Marathon. I've been lucky enough to do it twice.
Oh, cool.
Over the years, and although both times I was going for a time in my head, it got to the point where you take the headphones out and you just soak in the atmosphere. There's not one part of the entire route where there's not hundreds of people watching you. So just take it all in.
Yeah.
And hope it's not too hot, because I know a lot of people
this year
really suffered with that this year.
Yeah. It was a warm. Funny enough, I went up to London to watch a bit of it this year, and it was warm, and there was some very very hot, stressed, unhappy runners going around.
No, you'll love it.
And then professionally, where do you see yourself?
Yeah, so that's a tricky one, isn't it? I think kind of again reflecting on what I've said to you about how I see my career going. I try not to think too far down the line. I've been with BSI for 3.5 years. It is absolutely flown by. I can't quite believe that it's been there. like I said, my job keeps on kind of changing and evolving while I've been here, and if you like, I'm kind of being given more and different problems to fix. So as long as I'm able to kind of have problems to fix, then it's kind of keeping me interested and engaged, and so I'll crack on and see where it goes. And it is, thinking about gun medical devices specifically, it's quite an interesting time. When hasn't it been an interesting time recently? But it's quite an interesting time at the moment. You've got a lot going on in Europe. You've got a lot going on in the UK. You've got stuff going on in the US as well, and just globally, it's an interesting time. So I don't feel like there's a point at which I'm going to go, oh, I'm kind of bored of this. It is just interesting. I think the other thing, when I mentioned it before, is just the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning and round the corner into my office is it's just the people. The people in this industry are just fantastic, and I'd say that about MHRA, people in the regulator. I was a bit kind of full of trepidation coming to BSI. People are exactly the same here. They're motivated by the same thing. I speak to people in industry who've kind of moved from MHRA, and they say, you know what, they're motivated by exactly the same thing. It's kind of getting great products to patients and really caring about that. It's not, you kind of think maybe there's kind of, it's a hard-nosed world, and kind of we're all focusing on the bottom line, all that kind of thing. Actually, that's kind of, in most instances, that's the happy sort of consequence of doing the right thing and getting good products to people is, oh, look, we can make a bit of money while we're doing that. And that sounds incredibly sort of naive to some extent, but it does. You get that feeling a lot in this world, and I think it's what keeps us all coming back.
I think on that point, so Duncan and I, when we started out in recruitment, well, I started out first, then referred him in. I was joining a recruitment company. I didn't know what area I was recruited into, what markets. We could have been IT, we could have been public sector, we could have been anything. And we happened to land in medical devices, and sort of echoing what you've said about the people actually care what they do. And we see it, and it makes a tough recruitment job a lot easier knowing that. So we definitely feel the same.
Could have been very different. I'm not sure I'd have lasted 12 years recruiting into banking and finance. Nothing against the people that work in that industry, but just from the outside looking in, we've been very lucky.
Yeah, we are. I don't see the egos in this industry. There aren't this kind of people aren't here for sort of self-aggrandizement or anything like that. It's genuinely people are here because they want to make a difference, and that's so energizing. And so that's kind of going back to your question, which is where am I going professionally? I'm just genuinely happy and enjoy it and energized by virtue of working in this world.
And what excites you most about the future of our medtech industry?
Yeah, great question. I'd love to get to a place where we stop talking about regulation being a problem. Is that ever a thing? Is that ever a time? I don't know. That would be nice, because I feel like we need to get over some of these barriers, and we kind of return to a stage whereby we're all lined up and say we're just hugely positive about what we can do to kind of bring innovation and bring new products to people. So that's really nice. And when you look at the potential in some areas, of course I'm going to say it, AI is an obvious one, but you just look at the potential that has to really transform care and transform the way devices are used. It's enormous. We're still really kind of only dipping the toe in the water in kind of the area of personalized medicine, whereby you're kind of able to better direct pharmaceutical interventions based on kind of an understanding of someone's kind of genetic profile or disease profile or whatever it might be. That feels like another area that is pretty untapped, and feels like that could explode. And kind of linked to that is I really think diagnostics is one that is still, the industry is still getting to grips with where it needs to be. And COVID, that was kind of, it did kind of accelerate that quite a lot, because all of a sudden people understood the value of what a diagnostic test can do. And so I still think there's a kind of a launch pad there that we can jump on. But again, the people in the industry are the ones that are going to drive it, and I think it's shown itself to be, it's this kind of sweet spot between, you've got some big beasts that can make the kind of real kind of commercialize the products, but you've got so much kind of low level innovation happening, loads of ideas kind of bubbling up, and there's always stuff bubbling up. There's always a new idea. BSI, we speak to some people doing some really interesting things, and you kind of go, oh my God, it's so innovative and exciting.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, we see that every day working with companies from like university spin-outs all
Yeah.
the way through to multinationals. Just the innovation is incredible, and just see where it goes. AI. Eh?
Yeah.
um, but if you had to summarize one key lesson, leave our listeners with one lesson from your journey, what would that be?
Oh, okay. So for fear of repeating myself is um, have in mind a direction of, and this is kind of maybe it's not his job. It's kind of other stuff as well. Maybe it's kind of thinking about kind of business strategy as well. One of my theories. Have in mind the kind of the way you want to go, and think about the steps you want to take to get there. But accept that kind of that thing is it's in the distance. It's a bit blurry, and actually as you get kind of closer to it, it can change, and actually you can take a different turning, and that's fine. And so sort of always, I think it's always worth having something beyond to think about. What is it that's motivating me to move forward? But I think don't become so attached that those turning points completely derail you and mean you're kind of set back and go, oh my God, this has completely changed everything I thought about who I am and where I'm going. So it allows you to be able to kind of roll with the punches, to take the kind of the weird and wonderful things that happen to us all throughout our careers. Everyone has those times where they go, oh, I wasn't expecting that, or I wasn't expecting that to go there, or whatever. And so it allows you to do that. And like I said, don't be afraid to do something completely different. Take a break, do a different job, do something different, and that's fine, and it will enrich you as a person, your career. And I guess the last one is like I said, try and be kind, because you never know when you're going to work with people again when you do things, and so it's generally speaking not a bad approach to take.
Very good way to end. So Graeme, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story. Wish you all the best with the running, and I'm sure you'll share some fundraising links as well. If you fancy doing Paris the week before, I am doing Paris.
Oh, really?
If you fancy doing back to back, then feel free to join.
Dear, I'm a long way from that, but I'm intrigued to see if I get the bug. So I don't know. I'm loving it so far, but this is half marathon, so we'll see if I can.
Well, the big question here is who's going to get the better time.
Well, if he's trying to do his half under 90 minutes, then that's impressive. So put your money
maybe,
on Graeme.
yeah, maybe there should be a charity thing here where whoever gets the quickest time, the other person has to donate across.
I'm already organising a Capu charity half marathon in my head now.
Oh, wonderful!
We've said it, so watch this space.
I love
it. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us, sharing some really interesting points, lessons from your journey so far. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Please like and subscribe across all channels: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, and we look forward to bringing you another guest next week.
Thanks, Graeme.
Thanks both. Cheers.